All right, so something I saw today, which was great. So apparently, at the graduation ceremony for Boston University, Davy Zaslav was the person giving receiving an honorary degree, giving a speech, blah, 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 blah. Over the course of his 20-minute speech, there were multiple interruptions of the crowd, including the students, obviously, just chanting, "We don't want you here. Pay your writers. Shut up, Zaslav," which is wonderful. Did you see the outfit like he was wearing too? Like he's wearing this whole red everything, but like the sunglasses and the hair slicked back. It's sir, you are not Jack Nicholson. You can't just steal his drip like that. Come on.
Yeah, it's some hot garbage right there. We love to see the students standing up, and you know what? That's weirdly relevant. I don't think we planned this particular podcast episode this way, but it is very timely, and that's a great segue to bring us into that. Everyone yelling at Zaslav for not paying his writers, which is the reason we got this ongoing writers' strike. And what better strike to talk about? Well, just the writers' strike. But the second best that we can talk about, 1899, child laborers in New York City. Let's go.
Are we hitting this intro right now?
I don't know. Are we? I don't. I just. It seemed like a segue opportunity.
You know what? It's a great opportunity, and I think we got to take it.
All right, but now we have to draw this out further, so it's like an expanded
Hit it!
segue. Ah!
Two friends named Corey and Steve like talking about films and TV. They thought, hey, what if this was a show? That's how we got here, now you know. Wait, what's the name? That sounds terrible, go on. That sounds terrible, go on. We hope you stick around and have some fun right after our intro song. That sounds terrible, go on.
Welcome back, folks, to another fantastic episode of That Sounds Terrible. Go on. I am your host, Corey.
And I'm your other host, Steve, and we're joined by someone rather special today, aren't we, Corey?
Yeah, we sure are. It's a special edition here of the pod, and we got Scott. Scott, welcome on the pod.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I've been studying musical theater my entire life. Most recently graduated from UCLA with a degree in theater in 2020, go pandemics. And I'm trying to work in the industry in musical theater. I currently perform at Disney. That's my main gig at the moment. Various other music-based gigs on the side. Also, just generally a musical theater enthusiast and have been for quite a while.
Oh, we love to see it. We're super happy to have you here. And just for the context of this episode, and also for my own poor memory, I know you're more familiar with the stage adaptation of Newsies than the movie. Is this something that you've just seen, or is this something that you've like participated in some way?
So I've never actually been in Newsies.
Okay.
However, being in the musical theater scene in 2020, everybody did Newsies. So by watching that happen to the industry, I feel like I was a part of it in some way. It was just kind of like the Newsies revolution within theater in Los Angeles, which was super weird. But yeah, I've seen it. I've seen friends in it. I've not been in it though. I actually, you know what? When I was doing a cabaret show once, and we did a group number that was Seize the Day. I was the opening soloist, I think. So, and I got to do some fun dancing there. And then in college, we did King of New York as a tap number. So just a couple little snippets from the show.
Awesome. Love all of that. I'm personally not familiar at all with the stage version of it, but I grew up watching this movie. So I've seen it about a million times, but it's the only version of Newsies I know. So I'm glad to have this other perspective. Corey, where do you stand?
I grew up watching this film on repeat, as same as you, Steve. I love this film. I've seen the stage adaptation, the filmed version a few times here and there. It's also a ton of fun, even though it's different. Also, this time I bring to the table a lot of knowledge behind the Newsboys strike because I've been so interested in this since I was a kid. Like back when the internet was like in its infancy, I would literally look up articles and other little things about this. So as we go through here today, because by the way, folks, we're talking about 1992's Newsies, if you haven't picked up on that already. I'll point out to you guys, this happened, this might have happened, and this definitely didn't happen.
Awesome. So we're each bringing a little bit different viewpoint to this, and we definitely planned it that way.
Yes, this is exactly how things went.
We're so good. Yes.
And you know what, Steve? Speaking of being good at things, don't I know you?
Don't you?
Let's find out with Scott.
I have some questions for all of us that I think
Oh, how
will.
unexpected.
I know, I totally didn't prepare those ahead of time. Anyways, my first question for you guys is what would be your descriptive newsy name?
Ooh. Okay. Okay, I like that. Like we got Crutchy, we got Mush, we got Cowboy. I think mine would be Slink, partially because of my lanky build and partially because of my inherent laziness. I think that's a good intersection there. So yeah, they call me Slink.
Slink, I like that.
I think for me, I don't know, my gut tells me Chips. I don't know why. I would be called
I can see
Chips.
it. I can see it.
I think that's how it happens. I think when you're a newsie and your gut tells you what you should be called, that's what you're called. So,
It's my street name. Chips. Scott, what about you?
okay, so I have it between three, but I think I would be shaky because I just like, I'm a dude with anxiety and it definitely affects what happens to my body most of the time. I'm a shaky guy. So people would be like, "You're shaky." And I'd be like, "You're right. That's my name."
Really shaking things down here.
How about the next question? And I think something we spoke to just a bit ago probably answers it already. What union do you think would be the subject of a musical today? Screenwriters are obvious because we just talked about that, and that is currently ongoing. But like, think outside the box, maybe. What would you think?
Hmm. Yeah, setting aside the obvious timely choice. Hmm. What union would make a compelling strike story?
I have an answer, and maybe I guess the context of the answer might help you with your answer.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So the first thing that came to my mind was baristas, because there's this whole controversy at the moment surrounding Starbucks's employees' attempt to unionize and kind of their fight to receive that fair treatment from the corporation. And it is a fight. And I think, first of all, I think that needs to be more public. I think we need to be hearing more about what's going on so we can, be like the city at the end of the movie and join in and really fight. But I think that would be a fascinating kind of look, especially because it's an occupation that is so important, if not like obviously, then I guess kind of subconsciously to so many of us in our daily lives. You go to Starbucks, you go to Coffee Bean, you go to Pete's, wherever you go to Dutch Bros, and you get coffee from a barista. And what if they just all stopped doing their jobs? What would you do? You would die, probably.
Yeah, also baristas tend to have a large percentage of people that have a background in the arts. So the musical numbers would be amazing.
Oh, 100%. Maybe seeing about coffee and stuff. It'd be great.
Oh yeah, great choice. Love that. And yep, you did provide me some inspiration. So my pick is actually going to be mostly Amazon, but really any warehouse workers. Another just horribly mistreated, basically wage slavery sort of situation, and Amazon has been making tons of efforts to fight that unionization and firing people left and right to the scale that I read like within the next 2 to 3 years, they're literally going to run out of populace to hire from. There's such a high turnover rate.
I mean, I knew some of that already, but wow. Okay. I would like to see that musical, but it would be very hard to watch, I feel like.
There's going to be a number about peeing in bottles.
Oh, God.
Do it like a send up on the bottle dance from Fiddler.
Well, Steve, if you're done taking the piss out of me,
Never. Hit me.
my answer is going to be the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. Lasted about 50 days. Railroad workers just wanted more wages. People kept saying no. It got real violent. They think they torched an entire Union station. It eventually got squashed because militia had to jump in. Like the National Guard had to come in and pretty much just start beating the absolute crap out of people. Really, really huge. So I think that would be a lot of fun, really captivating with the violence. Maybe make it into a rock opera. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, angsty. Everyone's just holding chains for no reason.
Well, these are the chains that bind us to the railroad. Yeah.
Get him. I love it. I love it. That absolutely tracks for your character.
Next one. This might be a little tricky, and it's also sort of a two-parter. The first part of it is, if you were a newsie at the time of the film, what would be your go-to selling place? Like, where do you think you could find your best customers or most consistent customers? And the bonus, if you are up to it, is what would your strategy be?
I think I would hang outside of the taverns, find the drunkest times of day, and hit up people leaving. And I'd probably have to test strategies, use trial and error to figure out what works. But one, twist whatever headline is there into something about prohibition. Get them scared that this newspaper is going to take away their drinking, or like get them to accidentally bump into me and then spill beer on my papers, and then be like, "You break it, you bought it, bud." That's moving in volume.
And that's a good strategy too. Wow, I really like that.
Thank you, Corey. What you got?
I think I'd probably do the same thing. Find somewhere where people are going to be inebriated, but you also want to make sure, especially for the times, you find an area where people know how to read. For some reason, I think a burlesque house would be a perfect opportunity for that. You know what the show times are. You know when the massive amount of people are coming out. You just sit there like extra, extra, read all about it. I think that would be the smartest thing to do. Just hardcore pushing on them. If I got to lie a little bit, I wouldn't really call it lying. It's more like, improving the truth a little. But regardless of that, I think that'd be my strategy as well. Just wait for those show times to end. Massive amount of people. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, my answer is I don't know why my brain thought of a barbershop. People go and get their haircut and get a shave. They're not looking at anything. They're just literally sitting in a chair for a while with nothing to do. And I literally be like, hey, here's some reading material for you. Take this and go and sit and get your haircut, whatever. And also, I mean, this kind of spoke to me as somebody who has been in a barbershop quartet in the past, or actually kind of currently, depending on lots of factors. But my strategy would probably be I would sing some barbershop tunes, but I would change the lyrics to match the headlines. Kind of like, I don't know, Weird Al style, but 100 years ago.
And well, Scott, now we know you.
Oh, great.
Now, before we get into our next segment, just a quick advertisement break. Don't go anywhere.
Commercial. Buy the thing.
All right, folks, I am here at Goblin's Den Tattoo out in the lovely Syracuse, New York, being currently inked by Leah, owner, operator, and a fantastic individual. Leah, how are you doing today?
We're doing good.
Doing really good, doing good. Am I doing good? Am I sitting good?
Yes.
Excellent, fantastic.
We're both hydrated.
That's the dream. Let's be honest here. So how long have you been tattooing for?
I have been tattooing for technically 5 years.
So tell me, what are your favorite tattoos to both design and put on people's bodies?
I think the biggest thing for me is for someone to be really inspired with their idea, really excited. That's always a plus, and not just like a last second kind of deal. Something that you can think about and be like, yep, this is how we're going to do it, critique it, special, all that jazz. But personally, when it comes to style, my drawing style is preferred anime, but I do like cartoons. I do like spooky, scary stuff. I like plants and stuff. A lot of people come to me for floral. Yeah, so I like more animated stuff that can be stylized. Kind of neo-traditional, but not so out there.
Well, you heard it here, folks. If you're looking for any of those kinds of styles or designs, you know exactly where you need to hit up. That is Goblin's Den Tattoo out in Syracuse, New York. What's the Instagram name?
Instagram name is Goblin's Den Tattoo. Same for Facebook. We're currently adjusting our social medias and getting them more active. So Instagram, Goblin's Den Tattoo. Facebook, Goblin's Den Tattoo. And my name is Leah Tran, if you're trying to look for me personally. We also have another artist, Sid, and Sid is also on there as well.
And folks, the Goblin's Den Tattoo is also a safe place for those of you who are LGBTQ+. So if you're looking for a shop that's both safe and not run by pieces of human garbage, then we can give you the guarantee that the Goblin's Den is the destination. Again, that's the Goblin's Den. Find them on Instagram or Facebook and book your next session today. Welcome back, folks.
Hey!
Hi.
Guys, there's a lot of energy in this room right now, and I gotta tell you, we gotta bring it back because we gotta focus that energy and our attention on some very special people. Do you know who those people are?
Is it us? Because we're so pretty?
I'll tell you for 2 bits.
Shaving a haircut?
Close enough, Steve. It's our cast and crew! That's right, folks. Cast and Crew is part of the pod where we talk about some cast members, talk about some crew members. Now, are we going to be able to get to every single person?
Yes, as well as all their real life historical counterparts in detail.
Steve, I'm not a historian. There's not enough time for that. This is not the afternoon edition, all right? This is the podcast edition. So we got to get down to the nitty gritty.
We're literally recording in the afternoon.
You have no proof of that. So in any case, folks, we're not going to be able to get to everybody. So if there's somebody that we missed that you really feel like we should have touched on, please reach out to us on our Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Starting off, though, we have the director and the dance choreographer, Kenny Ortega. Ortega is best known as the dance choreographer on such films as 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off and 1987's Dirty Dancing. He also shared as both the director and dance choreographer for 1993's Hocus Pocus,
Episode 32.
as well as being the director for the first 3 High School Musical films and the Disney Descendants films.
Well, nobody's perfect.
First off, the direction in this is really solid. I think this was the first time he was directing a major film, I want to say. So the fact that Disney was like, hey, you should do the musical thing. We're going to get this guy who did the dancing in Dirty Dancing. I think it works.
It's a great choice. Oh, yeah. It is economical. It is dynamic. It keeps us engaged. Working with almost exclusively child actors and gets believable performances out of them. That's not anything to shake a stick at. As well as the choreo being something that they could do and make look good while not being like overly complicated. Great balance here.
Scott, what are your thoughts?
It feels the way you think the movie is supposed to feel. And I think that is the sign of a solid director, when it brings you into the world of the movie in some way, shape, or form. And I think the tone that he sets, I guess every decision he made from a directorial standpoint was excellent, frankly. I mean, from the look of the movie to, I guess, yeah, the acting is excellent. I mean, nobody talks about that. I feel like everybody just focuses on the dancing, but the acting is so solid.
Yeah, he gets some really good performances.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who dances myself, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Kenny Ortega and his choreography, and I think this movie has some phenomenal choreography in it. And I agree with I think that's what Steve was saying, how they made it look so, I guess, commonplace to the point where it's like, yeah, it's believable that these kids are doing this, right?
Absolutely. I fully believe these kids are dancing in the middle of the streets, as ridiculous as that sentence sounds.
But I have a question about that. And this might not be the time to ask it, but these kids are dancing that well and they're selling newspapers for a living.
The theater wasn't what it was back then, all right? You had to do what you had to do to get by.
The state of entertainment, I'll tell you.
Now, folks, we're talking about a musical film, right? We can't talk about a musical unless we talk about the music. And this music was by Alan Menken. Menken is best known as the man behind the music for 1989's The Little Mermaid, 1991's Beauty and the Beast, 1992's Aladdin, 1995's Pocahontas, 1986's Little Shop of Horrors,
Episode 14.
1996's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1997's Hercules, 2007's Enchanted, 2010's Tangled, and of course, TV's Gallivant.
Episode 23 and 49, and probably a lot more.
He's also been nominated for 19 Oscars, winning 7, 4 Emmys, winning 2, 16 Golden Globes, winning 7, 2 Golden Razzies, winning 1, 26 Grammys, winning 11, and 5 Tonys, winning 1 for the Best Original Score for the Newsies Broadway play. This makes him one of 18 people to ever achieve an EGOT. But that's not all, folks. In 2001, he was awarded a Disney Legends Award, and in 2008, he was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And finally, in 2010, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, before we get into the music, of course, what is music without lyrics in a musical? I know exactly who we ask about that. It's Mr. Jack Feldman. Now, Feldman is best known as the lyricist for 1995's A Goofy Movie and for TV's The Wubbulous World of Dr. Seuss. He has won 2 Golden Razzies out of 2 nominations, 1 Tony Award out of 1 nomination for Best Original Score for the Broadway version of Newsies, and nominated for 1 Annie Award. Let's talk these songs.
Wall-to-wall bangers.
There's one in particular that's not as good as the rest of them, but it's not a bad song. We will get there to that though. But overall, though, there's a power in these lyrics that I still feel resonates today. It's not just the themes of this film, it's how every song in this film, except for really one, serves a true, honest purpose to help support what these characters are going through, where they are at in this story, how they're coming together. It's a work of absolute art.
These are admittedly songs I grew up with, so there's a heavy nostalgia factor for me, but even then, there are some certified bangers here that I would put up against any list of show tunes, period. There's some beautiful stuff here, and also like there are some things about the songs here and how they're performed that are honestly like objectively cheesy and silly and not great, and I love them all the more for it. I'm here for every last silly bit. Bring it on.
I feel exactly the same way. I mean, honestly, music, that's the one thing I could talk for hours about. But I love the music in Newsies so much. And I just had this realization while we were having this conversation, and it's about Alan Menken and his songwriting. It's so good that I feel like if you take a song from one of his movies, you couldn't put it anywhere else. Like, you obviously that's from Newsies. Like, oh yeah, this song sounds like The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This song sounds like Tangled, whatever. And that's the sign of a brilliant composer, because he knows what he's writing for, and his songs sound like what he's writing for. Anybody can write generic songs that you can fit in anywhere. He writes specific songs. And that's not even about lyrics, that's about music.
Hey, we don't just give the choir to any old person, all right?
Straight up.
Another thing too is, first of all, I completely didn't know that he was the lyricist for a Goofy movie as well. I mean, those are fantastic lyrics. I don't know if, I mean, people kind of write it off as a kids movie, but those are fantastic lyrics, I must say. And honestly, for a while, I mean, before my most recent, I guess, before I was looking more into this movie before this podcast, I thought that Howard Ashman had written the lyrics for Newsies, which kind of doesn't make sense because I think he wasn't alive anymore at that point. But the lyrics sound like Howard Ashman's lyrics, and Howard Ashman, I think, was the person who worked the best with Alan Menken. Like, those two together created such wonderful songs. And I think that Feldman in this way kind of really found that groove of really meshing with Menken's music, and it created these like beasts of songs, like all of them.
Incredible combination of people. I also didn't know he was lyricist for Goofy Movie. I hold After Today in very high regard, as well as just a great song.
We'll get there, Steve. Don't worry.
Oh, we better.
Next up, folks, we have Christian Bale as Jack Cowboy Kelly. Now, Bale is best known as Patrick Bateman in 2000's American Psycho, Jim Graham in 1987's Empire of the Sun, Howell Pendragon in 2004's English dub of Howl's Moving Castle, John Connor in 2009's Terminator Salvation, Alfred Borden in 2006's The Prestige, and of course as Bruce Wayne / Batman in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. He has been nominated for 4 Oscars, winning 1, 4 BAFTAs, 5 Golden Globes, winning 2, and 8 SAG Awards, winning 2. I gotta be honest with you here, Christian Bale is not that strong of a singer, but he doesn't need to be.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I will keep making the case for singers not being a Broadway quality being the better choice for movies. This is another prime example of it. It fits his character. He is a young, hungry, ambitious kid who doesn't care too much about presentation for like when it comes to himself. It's just he sells whatever he wants to sell very well, and everything else falls by the wayside. And I think that is also how you could characterize his singing and his dancing, TBH.
I mean, he's tired. He's been beaten down by life for so long. He is so desperate for a change. All of this energy is going towards achieving his goals in life.
Absolutely.
That actually kind of made me draw a parallel to the musical. So in the musical, the character was played by Jeremy Jordan, who is a, very phenomenal performer, phenomenal singer, all that stuff. But he's never worked for me. He's never worked for me in that role because he sounds too pretty. Like, his voice sounds like a Broadway singer sounds. It's very much like what Steve was saying. If you take the grit out of the singing, you lose the character. The grit that he brings to the performance in total, in every single aspect of the character, is what makes it work. He is literally the only person who I've ever seen as Jack Kelly that I like watching. I feel like it is also a trap. It is a trap of a character because you can so easily just make it a grittier version of you. You can just make it kind of like, oh yeah, I'm a tough guy, whatever. No, he owns the character, the complete character. And I mean, yeah, I have a lot of respect for the performance and for him in this role.
And I don't think he's been in a musical ever since, and he wasn't ever in one prior to this.
Wasn't Swing Kids a musical? Was that a musical?
Was that a movie?
It's a movie with songs. I don't think it's a musical.
It's more of a dance movie than a musical, I guess.
Yeah, right, right.
No, but like, look up Swing Kids sometime. Young Robert Sean Leonard, young Christian Bale as swing dance enthusiasts in Nazi Germany. It's wild.
That sounds like a fever dream.
Yeah. Beside the point. Christian Bale, great, good stuff.
Next up, we've got Robert Duvall as Joseph Pulitzer. Duvall is best known as Boo Radley in 1962's To Kill a Mockingbird, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore in 1979's Apocalypse Now, Hub in 2003's Secondhand Lions, and Tom Hagen in the Godfather trilogy, as well as the video game based on The Godfather Part 1 and 2. He has also been nominated for 7 Oscars, winning 1, 3 BAFTAs, winning 1, 5 Emmys, winning 2, 7 Golden Globes, winning 4, and 7 SAG Awards, winning 1. So completely ignoring the fact that Robert Duvall is absolutely bat crazy these days, what a performance here, and what a surprise.
He is chewing the scenery to no end. He is the mustache twirliest of villains, and I love every second of it. God, he goes all in on it. It's captivating. He's silly, he's evil, he's greedy. Perfect for a newsman.
Completely swinging for the fences here.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also interesting that I find his character in a lot of ways very restrained. You know, he's very kind of like, he's doing these awful things, but at the same time, he has very much like the exact same demeanor on his face for the entire movie. And I think that's sort of a brilliance of the character. He is that way. He is that stoic. I guess the people who I think are the most evil without actually outwardly being evil. Like he's kind of like the Thrawn of the newspaper industry.
I get the reference. Don't worry, you're safe here.
I'm going to pretend I get the reference. I know that it's from Star Wars, but I haven't seen any actual Thrawn stuff. But yeah, totally. He's such a Thrawn. Give that guy a reality show named Thrawn Stars.
Next up, folks, we have Bill Pullman as Brian Denton. Now, Pullman is best known as Bob Hinson in 1992's A League of Their Own, Lone Star in 1987's Spaceballs, Dr. James Harvey in 1995's Casper, and President Thomas J. Whitmore in 1996's Independence Day. He has been nominated for 2 Saturn Awards as well as 1 SAG Award. So completely taking away that Bill Pullman is one of the most underrated actors of all time. I'll die on the hill. I'll fist fight people about it. Sorry, let me say that to better fit the film. I will soak people about it.
Soak him!
What another great iconic performance from him. Like putting him in as this newspaper guy. He's very like reserved because he's seen a lot. Notice his emotions are held back. He holds back because he knows as a reporter, you have to stay indifferent to write the best story. But also the guy literally said, oh, I was an ace war correspondent. I marched a hill with, Teddy Roosevelt. This guy's been through it and it shows.
Yes. I love how you can see the gears turning behind his eyes the whole time. He's always calculating the next move. He's the smartest character in this film by a long shot. And there's a lot of restraint brought to it, like you said. But you can also kind of see as the movie progresses how, like, internally he's going more and more for the struggle. Like at the beginning, it was clearly just because he wanted a good story. But by the end, he gives up the career in favor of the struggle, and it feels believable every step of the way. Also, I will say, weakest singer in the cast, and I don't give a shit because he's great.
I was watching him, and I actually watching this movie again. It kind of made me look up Bill Pullman as an actor, kind of like, oh yeah, what else has he been in? The fact that he has not been in more things is like honestly a disgrace. Like the man needs to be in more movies. He needed to have been in more movies because he is a phenomenal actor, and he is, he has, the heart that you want in an actor in a movie. And he definitely puts it on display in Newsies. But also, you talked about his singing. Let's not sleep on his dancing. He definitely has those steps. I mean, surprisingly, for a man who probably hasn't been on been in a musical before. He fits right in, you know. And there are some people, even if they're not dancers, they have that rhythm, they have the ability to pick up steps. Some people don't have that, you know, and he does. So he fits right in, and it's, you know, helps complete this, yeah, this character. Wow, it's impressive stuff he can do, you know. He can act, he can dance. Wow, what a cool guy.
I think that's also a testament to the choreography and that it was like designed to amplify the strengths that the actors were bringing.
It all comes back to Kenny.
Sweet Kenny.
Next up, we have David Moscow as David Jacobs. Moscow is best known as Lomez Jr. in Seinfeld, Season 8, Episode 14, The Van Buren Boys, as well as a young Josh Baskin in 1988's Big. Not a lot for him filmography-wise, but his performance here is really solid. There's one particular very emotional scene that I really feel it from him. I think it is his moment to truly shine and where his character truly changes. We will get there when we get there, but again, strong performance like everybody else on this list.
This man is certified triple threat, acts like a dream, sings like a dream, dances like a dream. Great, perfect casting for this. But you also just like feel that energy of the reluctant leader that he eventually becomes. Again, you're following him on this journey, and if every step of the way is believable, just wants to make some money for his family while his dad is injured, and then goes on to leading one of the largest labor movements of his time. It's incredible. I'm surprised he hasn't been in more stuff, but also the Van Buren Boys are iconic.
The second that he appears in the movie, your heart's with him. And I think he really does a great job at, I guess, being the character. And I will say it is unfortunate that I feel like in so much of the movie he is overshadowed by Christian Bale. And I feel like that's true for a lot of other actors in the movie, especially the younger actors. They are overshadowed by Christian Bale because that is the way his character was written to be. I wanted to see more of David Moscow. I guess that kind of takes me to another thing of, I feel like there was a lot of characters that we didn't get to see a ton of. You know, feels like some of their stories were cut a little short. Some of their, I guess, development was off camera or off screen. And I would have so loved to have seen more of what his journey was in this movie. You know, because I feel like he is at least as much, if not a worthier main character than Jack Kelly.
Agreed. He's objectively got more to lose. He's really the more active protagonist also in like organizing the labor movement and keeping them on the right track, and kind of the strike is his idea in the first place, even if he doesn't intend it to be. More focus on him would be good. It's almost like a Andy Dufresne and Red situation.
And folks, that's going to be our casted crew.
Oh, it's the cast and crew!
Next up, the generically named How It's Made.
Hey, how'd they make that?
As always, folks, with the generically named How It's Made, I have sweated in these shops for ever so long for pennies on the dollar to go ahead and compile this whole production history, beginning to end, to the best of my ability. Now, what I've done with this is given it to Steve. Steve will be opening this document right now, and he will be reading it off, giving us his reactions in real time. So, Steve, whenever you're ready, hit me with the news.
All right. In July of 1899, William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer decided to increase the cost of their papers, the New York Journal and New York World respectively, from 50 cents to 60 cents for every 100 papers sold to the newsboys. However, the price per paper would remain at 1 cent per paper, passing the buck on to the newsboys. It's not great, but also that's what the movie set up so far, so we're completely historically accurate. Have a great day, folks. Thanks you for coming to our pod. That is it.
Steve, you have another edition. All right, come on. Page 17.
Oh, I didn't see that there was extra. The newsboys decided to form a union and strike. The strike would last until August 2nd, and at one point rallied around 5,000 newsboys at one place. The strike would end when Pulitzer and Hearst compromised by keeping the price at 60 cents per 100 papers, but would buy back any unsold papers. That's not as great of a deal as what the movie came to. I feel like they would find plenty of excuses to not buy back the papers. Like, oh, you got a speck of dust on this one. It's no good. We can't sell it.
Well, one of the problems became that these boys are literally walking around all day. right? They're walking around for hours and hours. Are they really going to travel all the way back?
Also, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it definitely feels like it's ending with the executives, the rich people still making the terms, where in the movie it feels like very much the newsboys are the ones making the terms. And that's a very unfortunate and dissatisfying true ending to what actually
Yeah,
happened.
such is life. I tell you, man, William Randolph Hearst can suck it. Cut to June of 1990. Writers Bob Zudiker and Noni White approach producer Michael Fennell with an idea for a drama based on the newsboy strike of 1899. Zudiker came up with the idea while reading Children of the City by David Nashaw, which featured a chapter about the strike. Fennell would bring the pitch to Disney studio head at the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, who quickly ordered a script. Quite a story to bring to Disney of all. Like, that's the first place they decided to go with a drama about a labor dispute.
They make so much of their money making films about sad children.
That's true. Several drafts later, Katzenberg, inspired by 1989's The Little Mermaid and 1991's Beauty and the Beast, made the decision to turn the film into a musical, good choice, believing that musicals were coming back. Well, when Fennell was told, he's quoted as describing his response as a dead silence on the end of my phone. My brother in Christ, you brought this movie to Disney. What did you think was going to happen? If you wanted a gritty drama, go to literally any other studio.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure New Line was still a thing.
They weren't Old Line back then. Disney would then bring in Kenny Ortega to direct, along with Alan Menken to write the score. Menken originally wanted to team up with Howard Ashman, as the two had collaborated on the music for The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. However, Ashman was too sick due to complications with AIDS, so Menken would recruit Jack Feldman.
That makes me so sad.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to get sadder.
It shocked me to learn that that Alan Menken did not actually score, quote unquote, the film. He wrote the songs, but there was scoring done by someone else, like underscoring done by someone
I
else.
feel like that's relatively common for movie musicals.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you go back to like Little Mermaid, for example, he did write the score. He did all of the music for that. It was interesting that they just didn't have him do both.
Were there like other projects he was working on at the time, or
He was still in the golden age writing songs for all of the animated films. But I mean, this man worked on Gallivant. His well never runs out, He always has time. He always has ideas.
yeah, we're going back to way back in days of old. The day before the first songwriting session, Ashman passed away. Well, there we go. Menken would fly out to Los Angeles to write a track, flew back home for Ashman's funeral, and then flew back to Los Angeles to continue working. Holy shit, that has got to be a huge toll on the brain and the soul and everything. That's, God, emotional whiplash like a mother. Due to the constant rewrites, the two found the songwriting to be stressful. Oh, there we go. Okay, I guess it was.
Maybe because of how stressful it was, that's why he just turned down doing the score. I would imagine he just turned it down. He's like, listen, you guys have me rewriting every song every other week.
You know what? That's a fair point. Because I will say underscoring, in my opinion, is a lot harder. Songs start, middle, and end. They have a structure, it's a story. You kind of know what to do, especially, if that is primarily what you do. But a score, like that's possibly an entire movie's worth of just music that goes to a film. That's very difficult work.
These are all good points. And you know what? I would say Menken earned it. Christian Bale and David Moscow would spend the next few months learning dance routines and worked with Madonna's vocal coach. Well, that's fun. Maybe that's why Christian Bale has a British accent now. They would train 6 days a week. Prior to filming, Bale had trouble securing a work visa to stay in California to film the movie, but was ultimately able to obtain one after Steven Spielberg stepped in to assist. No big deal. Training would continue all through filming, which would begin in April of 1991. I was a year old. Money was tight, so there wasn't time to refilm some scenes, such as scenes shot before Moscow was told to get rid of his natural New York accent, or when they wanted Bale to appear disheveled. He was pretty disheveled for most of the film, in like a sanitized Hollywood way. At the end of every shooting week, the Newsies would pull a prank on Ortega, one of which included trying to drop water on his head. Trying? Come on, kids, do
What?
better.
They ended up failing, so they got him with squirt guns instead.
They soaked him.
Ah, they soaked him! Love that. The cast would even go to Disneyland during breaks. I'm sure that the cast members were almost as good as they are today. Almost. Filming would conclude in July. Great time to go to Disneyland. The film would be released on April 10th, 1992, and would make $1.2 million on opening weekend. It would go on to make $2.8 million total at the box office against a $15 million budget. Yeah, this is notoriously a flop for Disney and why they stopped doing live-action musicals, which is a shame. Soon after the release, Menken was having breakfast with Katzenberg, where they were discussing the abysmal opening weekend. Menken asked Katzenberg what they were going to do, to which Katzenberg said, "I could throw $10 million up in the air right now, and it would do just as much good. It's DOA, baby. DOA. Dynamic on arrival? Yes, it is."
Such a cigar chopping executive.
For realsies, he's the real-life Pulitzer, man. The film would be pulled from almost every theater after just 2 weeks. Yikes. It would be nominated for one Stinkers Award. Never heard of that. Probably because they stink. And 5 Golden Razzies, winning one for Worst Original Song for High Times, Hard Times. It's not a great song. I will concede that. Menken found out he won the Razzie while backstage after having received 2 Oscars for Aladdin. So, he had something to dry his tears with. That's good. The film would find more love on home video, where Corey and I found love for it, and being on heavy rotation on the Disney Channel, developing a cult following that would eventually lead to a stage adaptation. That adaptation would be released in 2012 and go on to win 8 Tony Awards. It's a real Cinderella story there.
It's actually a real Newsies story.
I like that better. Yeah, I don't understand why this didn't get all the love. These songs are amazing. It's a heartwarming story. The performances are great. Everything about this is just so much fun. And people didn't get it in the early 90s.
It was clearly ahead of its time, and I think that was the problem. I don't think people were ready for live action musicals, especially taking your kids to a live action musical. Back then, kids weren't excited for musicals. Kids were all about, animated cartoons. Live action just wasn't really as big of a draw.
You're right, Corey. Children are garbage. Thank you.
I think another pitfall was also that it was a story that people weren't familiar with. It was not just a live action musical, but it was a new content live action musical. And I think that is part of what, people didn't have any real, I'm of course putting my words in other people's mouths, but I'm assuming that many didn't have a connection or enough of one to want to go see it. Because I feel like to some people, you go to a movie and you think, what can I gain from watching this? And I feel like some people were just like, I can't gain anything from watching this. Especially if you can find out what happens we can now by going online or like opening a book, finding out what happened, going to school, learning about history, learning about what happened during the Newsboys strike and all that stuff. Like, how it ends.
It's unfortunately a perfect storm of bad marketability at the time.
I guess they didn't have enough star power either.
Yeah, Christian Bale was not a name back then. Bill Pullman, I feel like, was still coming up.
I feel like Anne Margaret probably was one of the biggest names that they had.
Well, those are the 2 people they put up there. They put Duvall and they put Anne Margaret.
I wonder if there's another opportunity or a different point to talk about this, but I keep thinking about her role and I'm like, there really is no point to having her in the movie at all. Like, that character kind of does nothing.
No, she has a point. I can absolutely. We'll get there.
Okay, 100%. Awesome. Well, I will say as well, even though it did poorly in the box office, I feel like at this point, at least I hope, they're grateful that the movie was made because it gave way to the musical that was so successful.
Yeah, no, it worked out for everyone in the end. Also, just like as a kid growing up where this tape was constantly in my family's VCR, this also, at least from my perspective, established Christian Bale as Jonathan Taylor Thomas before Jonathan Taylor Thomas was the thing. Like, my sisters were just obsessed with this guy. But then years later, when he got cast as Batman, really? The guy from Newsies? Skinny little guy singing around about being a cowboy? That's Batman? Really?
That's kind of what everyone else was saying at the time, too, if I remember.
And how wrong we were.
And thus concludes the generically named How It's Made. They made it.
All right, folks, before we move on to our next segment, we've got to take just one more quick commercial break. See you in the funny pages.
Because it's like newspapers.
Hi, folks. Do you like hot women, cold beers, and nice booty?
I don't think anyone likes that stuff.
Well, if you do like that stuff, I got a great place for you to hit up. Steve, have you ever been to The Barrel in Rochester, New York, 173 Anderson Ave?
I feel like I've seen a lot of barrels. I don't know if I could pinpoint where all of them are.
But Steve, this is The Barrel at 173 Anderson Ave, Rochester, New York. It's got girls, it's got booze, it's got boobs, and it's got a great little vibe inside of it.
Huh, you don't say.
You want a great place to host a bachelor party? I got the spot. You want a great place to go and stare at hot girls while giving them all of your money, effectively supporting female entrepreneurs? I got the spot. You want to find out where your drunk uncle hangs out after work every day? I got the spot. That's right, folks. It's 173 Anderson Avenue, The Barrel, over in Rochester, New York. Stop on in, bring cash. Welcome back, folks.
Howdy!
Hey,
All right, guys, I think it's about time that we sit down, get our nice little, cup of coffee, maybe a donut, and get into this breakdown.
Oh, don't do this to me.
That's right, folks. The breakdown is the part of the pod where we get into every scene that we can, going through the whole plot, breaking it down as we go, giving our thoughts along the way. Now, we may not touch on every single scene. I know, but we're doing the best we can. Don't judge us, all right?
I'll probably judge you.
You guys are doing the best you can. I have not been bringing any amount of effort to this entire time, Corey. We're supposed to be trying.
No, Steve, we know. We still love you anyways, but we know.
Thank you. I love me too.
All right, folks, let's go ahead. Let's get right into this here. Special edition, extra, starting in 3, 2. In 1899, 17-year-old Jack Cowboy Kelly is one of many struggling newspaper hawkers in New York City, selling copies of the New York World on the streets of Manhattan, featuring the song Carrying the Banner. So before we even get into the song, the film kicks off with a little voiceover set to images made to appear as if they were printed on newspaper, right? Just giving a quick little, these kids were either very poor or orphans, and the year was 1899. It serves its purpose, and it draws you in.
I feel like the old-timey photographs immediately place you in a certain period of time. And yeah, just real quick, efficient, establishing the setting before we get into it. Also, I never really absorbed the opening shot of the plaque on the statue saying, "Go West, young man." That really stuck out to me this time, and it's Jack's entire life plan is to go west and be a young man. So, and knowing what we know about him by the end of the movie, is this where he got the idea? Just been staring at the statue right outside where he lives for so long that he's just like, maybe I will.
Yeah, I was right there with you. I mean, I actually, this last watch was also very focused on the statue. And I was like, first of all, what a cool set piece. And what great use of it as well. Just to have the, zoom out, have the kids just lying on the statue. Like, that's awesome. Additionally, I had thought to myself, how many movies actually take the time to, before the movie starts, say it is based on true events or based on a true story? You see that in previews, you see that in like press releases, whatever. This one actually tells you before the movie starts, hey, this is based on true events. Because I feel like maybe people didn't know ahead of time. And I like that they take that time.
Well, the strike itself in real life was about a week long, so not a lot of people knew about it. Of course, newspapers aren't going to really be writing about a newsboy strike that much, especially when you look at the kind of pull that Hearst and Pulitzer had. I mean, it's depicted in the film, but we all know it's true at this point. So there's some things we know, there's some things we don't, and the reason we don't know things is because, well, the paper said so.
Yeah, if it's not in the news, it didn't happen, right?
Next, we get this scene in a lodging house where we see an old man, played by Mark Lawrence, going through and waking up all the newsboys, much to the boys' displeasure. This is also kind of fun. We're really easing into the setting a bit more. Like, okay, all these boys live together. Some of them are like even sleeping on the same bed because they're just trying to get by. But it's also to show the camaraderie they all have because they all live together. They all know each other. They're all in the same struggle together.
And I love how they establish how they've all got the same morning routine. They all know how to stay out of each other's way just enough to get ready for the day. They've all got the same goal. And the way, like the opening song where they're all just sharing, where's a good spot to sell? What's a good for this? And just like normal everyday conversation, it feels like, but also establishes the dynamic that these kids have with each other. It gives us a hint of like their different characterizations, and it's such a catchy song.
All right, and speaking of which, let's get into carrying the banner.
It is a fine life carrying the banner, juxtaposed with these kids in a whorehouse. It's great.
I was gonna say, I think that actually speaks to the brilliance of these lyrics because they're what people would say, just put to music, and it's not unnatural. My favorite line is when the guy's like, "Move your elbow," the kid's brushing his teeth and like shoving his elbow in the other kid's face. I'm like, that's just genius. I love so often when lyrics are able to, I guess, adapt to reality so easily. You know, like how did they know that this was what was gonna happen? How did they know that they were gonna be able to like move your elbow, like what could be going on, right? Like it works so well that they they were able to almost predict what would be in the movie and create the scene without a scene being there.
Yeah, that is wicked impressive. I didn't even like consider that much. That's yeah.
Like you both said, fantastic. You get to see that all these kids are ranging in age. They all have their own personality. The choreography is tight. Everyone has a purpose. They're hitting their mark. And then, of course, all the fun and games of these kids, because, you know, summer stinks, winter's waiting. They get to the scene with the nuns. And then the song just hard stops.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns into this very angelic singing from these nuns, of course, who are bringing these boys bread and coffee because that's the only breakfast that these guys can afford. Like they're given like one roll and people are like, oh, hey, they don't have enough rolls. Let me just split a roll with you. So like half a roll and then you're walking around all day. Notice though, their demeanor completely changes once these nuns appear. They act very calm. They act incredibly respectful. Why? This is the only kindness that they're shown by society. Everyone else looks down at them. Everyone just doesn't care about them, but these nuns care. These nuns practically float on a cloud into this scene, speaking softly to these boys. And it's such a wonderful moment. I loved how it just cuts it into the song where it's not distracting.
I had a different interpretation of that segment of the song. The nuns doing their charitable work every day, going out and feeding the hungry. I believe the boys' demeanor when they get up to them is an act that they're putting on because they know they have to behave in order to get the food and coffee. I would say this is more just like speaks to the adaptability and ingenuity of these young kids figuring out how to get by in this world. That's just my take.
I can see it either way. I really can. But I'm also thinking about, I thought at first it was an act as well, but then you hear the thing that the nuns keep saying about, like, you know, Jesus loves you, all that stuff. And I do believe that in their case, it is unconditional because they have to know what these kids are doing. You know, they're around the city. Like these kids are dirty. They're, I guess, they live all together. You know, it's like it's not the most pure conditions, whatever. And yet they're choosing to be charitable anyway because that is what they are commanded by their faith, whatever. So I feel like even if it is an act, they don't have to put it on. I mean, like the boys don't have to pretend to be good. They even if they weren't good, the nuns wouldn't care. Probably. I don't know.
Speaking of things we don't know, then you have this woman coming in, played by Joanne Harris, this just belting out this harrowing plea, looking through the crowd for her son Patrick, and oh my god, it sucks you right in.
That's an entire story in like 3 lines.
What's to represent is these kids aren't just poor, some of them aren't just orphans, some of them are runaways. It really helps to further cement that this is truly a ragtag group of kids just barely getting by.
This is the real life Neverland.
I mean, it's you kind of pointed it out there, Corey, that the way that she sings it, I don't know how to describe it. Like the fact that it is in the range that it is so powerful. Like it's belted for you, you know, it could be a sweet, you know, very kind of saccharine moment or sorrowful moment, even, you know, oh, I'm looking for my kid, whatever. But she's like kind of screaming it out there a bit. And that's very touching because she doesn't know, like it's the fear of, oh my God, I don't know what's gonna happen, like what's happening to my kid. Fun little fact that melody, the God Save My Son or whatever it is the same melody as Part of That World.
Oh, it is. I'm like hearing it now in my head. I'm like, oh my god.
I like to hear things that are in other things, and it's often an Alan Menken thing too. Have you ever heard of the parallel between part of your world and somewhere that's green?
Yes.
No, but I can hear it.
Yeah, that one is obviously, but it's like it's interesting because every composer has their like idiosyncrasies that they put into their writing, and that's kind of one of his, I think. And it's fun to see, how it kind of carries over and imprints their songs in everything that they do.
One I've noticed of his is the intro to the song Beauty and the Beast is the first few notes of the melody of the title song for Gallivant. What a guy.
We also quickly get to meet the Delancey brothers during this song. Delancey brothers are played by Sean Greenblatt and David Shankopf. Honestly, historically accurate here. The removing another person's hat during this time was an incredibly huge insult. Essentially, it's the equivalent of spitting in someone's face today.
The Delanceys obviously suck in every single way, but those are nice hats. So I can see that being a serious offense for sure. Also, it exemplifies like how goofy and carefree and childlike Jack still is.
It reminds me of kind of like Romeo and Juliet kind of deal with like the Montagues going out and causing violence. Like, you got your thumb at me, sir. In a way, Jack Kelly is kind of like a Mercutio of sorts. He's kind of the I can do whatever I want because I'm a boy. Fight me kind of deal.
I like that.
When David Jacobs and his younger brother Les, played by Luke Edwards, join the Newsies, Jack notices David's intelligence and Les's marketable cuteness and self-servingly takes them under his wing. Meanwhile, New York World publisher Joseph Pulitzer tasks his advisors on how he can make more money than his rival, William Randolph Hearst. Get to meet Mr. Wiesel, or as the kids call him, Weasel, played by Michael Lerner. There's a delightful little exchange of dialogue between him and Racetrack, played by Max Casella, where Mr. Weasel says to him, "It's a sure thing," and Racetrack just goes, "Oh yeah, not like last time." When talking about like, oh, I got a hot tip on the fourth race.
Yes. All the while munching on a cigar. Definitely something that like Disney only could get away with in the 90s is having a bunch of kids on screen smoking tobacco.
It's interesting too. You might not know this about me, but I'm a Jewish guy, right? I'm a Jew. How Wiesel is so very clearly a Jewish stereotype and so very much like the economic antagonist, even though he isn't the economic antagonist.
He's the heel.
Right, right. But and they make fun of him, like by calling him Weasel. Like, Wiesel is a Jewish last name, and they make fun of him and call him Weasel, even though at that point he hasn't really done anything to deserve it. I don't know. That's just my little, find veiled anti-Semitism in everything if you look hard enough. Not everything, but you know what I mean.
never noticed that until you mentioned that, but now that you do, it just kind of like clicked in my head.
Yep.
So, wow, good call.
Not nearly as blatant as the goblins in Harry Potter, but that's absolutely what's going on there.
And it's the whole like money thing as well, even though Pulitzer isn't probably, he's probably not Jewish. Neither is Hearst, but that's my vendetta against entertainment.
No, that's 100% valid.
There's also a great meet here between David and Jack. It further establishes Jack's personality, and it's a great introduction to David that shows that while he's smart, he clearly comes from a different world than the rest of the Newsies.
And we can see the strengths of both of these characters right off the bat. Just sets up a great chemistry between them.
We also get an intro to Pulitzer. Chilling. You're talking about strength here? Oh my god, this man is commanding the room whether you like it or not. Right off the bat, it's like he clearly has all of the money in the world. Yeah, but I have to have more money than Hearst.
His entire motivation, and it's probably the most realistic motivation a villain could have. TBH, I'm rich, but I want more.
It feels like it's out of spite, honestly. Like, you know what? I have enough money, but I'm spiteful, so I'm going to make it harder for somebody else.
Rich people got nothing better to do. Also, just like his whole thing where he has to use the magnifying glass to read anything while wearing glasses is just, it's so extra and silly, and it makes him seem that much more cartoonish of a villain, which I love every second of. He goes all in. He is hamming it up.
I want to know if that was a Duvall choice or if that was an Ortega choice.
Yeah, I would also like to know that.
I'd like to settle on that one.
At a boxing match, Jack, David, and Les begin selling papers. Jack is improving the truth about the content of the articles to sell more papers and showing Les how to use sympathy to sell even more papers. David questions Jack's sales method. Suddenly, Jack spots a man in the crowd and tells David and Les to run. The man chases them for some time, calling Jack Sullivan, as he does. After losing him, Jack explains that the man is Snyder, played by Kevin Teague, the warden of the Refuge, a local penitentiary for young boys. He tells them that he was once jailed there for stealing food, but he escaped by hiding in Teddy Roosevelt's carriage one night. This is just further character development here between Jack and David, Jack showing how he sells the most papers out of every other newsie and gives us more of a glimpse into his past, and further cementing that David is not about this life.
Yeah, also establishing some real personal stakes for Jack here. He is a wanted man, and just by being out in public, he is shown how at risk he is. But he still keeps doing his thing and selling his papes. But this is just a great way to establish a hint of his backstory, but also the actual danger that he's generally always in.
It's interesting too that this seems to be the only character in the movie that Jack is actually scared of. Because everybody else he tries to fight, but this man, he sees him and he runs. Like he's like, this man cannot catch me, even though he knows he can escape and he has done it before. So I find that interesting. This man just being present is so scary for Jack that he has to run away.
Well, think about it like this. Snyder represents imprisonment, right? All Jack wants is to be free. It is truly his greatest fear. I feel like Jack could lose everyone in his entire life. As long as he had his freedom, he'd be pretty happy with that at this point.
Yeah. I guess now that I think about it, even if he can't escape, he's going to have just this person always there trying to catch him. So it's kind of the one thing that he can't escape, can't fight.
I think it's also pretty heavily implied that the refuge is a very abusive environment, and Jack was there for at least 6 months, if not an entire year, and that's got to take a toll on a person as well. Snyder just kind of represents that all to him also.
Finding their own refuge in a local theater, Jack introduces them to the owner and lead performer, Meta Larkson, played by Anne Margaret. Meta is an old friend of Jack's and tells them that they can stay to watch the show while they hide out, featuring the song My Lovey-Dovey Baby. After leaving the theater, the boys happen across a trolley workers' strike breaking out into violence. Now, I may be making leaps here, but you brought up before that Meta doesn't serve any purpose, right?
I could be swayed easily.
So here is my take on that. Meta is the one who showed Jack how to work crowds to make money. She's clearly known him for years. He didn't just wake up one day and instantly know how to scam people out of money or how to get people to like you, right? Who better to teach Jack than a lifelong friend?
I think the movie could have done a better job of establishing that, but it tracks narratively. Also, I wonder if actually, you know what? I'm gonna confidently guess that her character is meant to be an homage to Jenny Lind, the Swedish nightingale, Swedish songbird, the opera singer that P.T. Barnum toured with.
I'd buy that. If that came out as true, I'd buy that.
Yeah, that is based on absolutely nothing aside from the fact that her stage name is the Swedish insert bird here.
Yeah, that actually is that. Wow. I don't see now how it can't be that. That's very meta.
This guy!
All right, let's talk My Lovey-Dovey Baby. This helps to solidify that not only is she a burlesque dancer, but Meta is also incredibly popular. Her house is packed. Guys are catcalling her, wooing, like, baby, you're breaking my heart. It serves its purpose, even if it's not like the strongest song.
It is the most Disney-fied burlesque number that exists.
Yes.
It is so like clean and wholesome and just like upbeat and happy. It makes me laugh every time. The song itself, I feel, is kind of on like the weaker end of the spectrum for this musical, which isn't to say it's bad, but things kind of screech to a halt for a little bit here.
Yeah, and I agree. You actually made me think of something when you were talking about the most Disney-fied burlesque song, because I actually might have to argue that with you. Because I would like to point to a song from The Great Mouse Detective called Let Me Be Good to You. which is also, it's a mouse doing a burlesque dance on stage, singing this very seductive song. And it's, I think, more seductive than Metal Larkson.
When I say it's the most Disney-fied, I mean it's the least erotic.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now I agree with you there. So they actually were able to do more in an animated film with a mouse or whatever than with Anne Margaret in a live action movie.
Well, to be fair, mice are hot.
Yeah.
So the trolley strike is also very important here. It's important for Jack and David to see this unfold because later on, it's going to help these boys feel validated and empowered for choosing to go on strike.
Up until this point, the trolley strike has been going on for a while, but from Jack's perspective and Davy and everyone else, the strike is really just a headline. It's just been words on newspaper that people read about after the fact. This is the first time they're actually like encountering the news in real life, and seeing like how powerful it is. And I think that is a huge driving factor in the catalyst for them because they knew about the strike. They read about the strike every single day, but it hasn't impacted them at all. Hasn't given them any ideas.
Jack is invited to the Jacobs home for dinner, where he becomes enamored with their sister, Sarah, played by Ellie Keats. It's revealed during dinner that David quit school to help his family's financials while their dad is out of work due to a factory injury. Later, Jack laments his isolation due to lacking a family of his own. He fantasizes about traveling to New Mexico, featuring the song Santa Fe. Hold off on the Santa Fe. We got to talk about this dinner scene. Jack flirting with Sarah is adorably awkward for the whole family.
It is spot on, cocky teenager hitting on pretty girl. I feel like they really nail that, and family has an appropriate reaction. This is my comparison to Romeo and Juliet. There's about as much substance in Jack and Sarah's relationship as there is between Romeo and Juliet, which is to say they really just find each other hot, and that's it.
I was gonna say something I actually took notes the last time I watched the movie. And I was thinking, wow, this had no development at all. This relationship is literally just like, oh, we like each other, I guess, and now we're kissing in front of everybody.
That's kind of how it was back then, let's be honest. You only lived like 40 years tops. You did not have time for pleasantries. Also, the dinner scene helps kind of paint another picture. It explains why someone who is as book smart as David is doing manual labor. And just remember, folks, workers' comp wasn't a thing until unions got involved. So before that, if you got hurt, you just got fired. So thank you, unions.
And it's interesting too, because you kind of have this, I guess what I saw in the nuns earlier, that you have this truly benevolent father figure who sees this boy who's very clearly kind of like a vagrant of some kind, lives with a, like, is just in a awful situation, dirty, whatever. And he's just like, yeah, come over for dinner. It's fine. You know what? Yeah, don't know what? Date my daughter. It's fine. And I'm just like, wow, that's very nice, very understanding of a father. A good father. That is what Jack is missing in his life.
Also, shout out to a Disney movie featuring a family where both parents are both alive and happy.
One of them's injured though, so.
What are you, a factory manager back in the at 1900s? Like he's not
He's
dead.
dead to me. You can't pull that lever. He ain't got no use for me. Get out of here.
Let's talk Santa Fe. One hell of an I Want song. I would probably put this in my top 10 I Want songs of all time. Bale's voice, I always said before, it's not bad. It's not amazing. It absolutely works for the song.
There's so much heart in this song. It is beautiful. This is one that has absolute lasting power for me. And I love all the different like tiny pieces of like Western aesthetic that he's able to pull in while walking through the streets of New York City. Very well staged number. Also, the dance break. Can we talk about the dance break for a second?
It's so wild.
It is. I'm not going to say it's good because it's not, but also I will say I love every second of it. He's so ridiculous, tumbling around and his little when he's doing like his little cowboy dance. It is silly, it's ridiculous, it's dumb, and I wouldn't change a thing.
I agree. I mean, the thing that sticks out to me about that song is the dance. And part of me watching it, I'm like, if you don't draw the parallel, you're kind of like, what is he doing? Because you at some points it's a style where you can't even obviously tell that that's dancing. It's essentially like jumping around with your arms in different positions. It's very much a standstill in the song because like he's singing this sweet ballad, and then all of a sudden it's very rhythmic dance. All of a sudden with a lot of grounding and weight and stuff, and I'm like, whoa, like that was whiplash tiny bit.
And they throw the harmonica in out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, we love a harmonica, right? There's something I want to point out about the song that is actually a difference from the musical. So this is a show-stopping number in the musical, and one of the reasons why I dislike Jeremy Jordan in the role because he sings it too well. They wrote it so that the last note that he sings is this really high belted note, and it's just like, a show-stopping note, big applause at the end. And I'm just like, the song in the movie is a lot more understated, and it's a lot more like it's a softer ending. It's not final. Nothing is final, and nothing deserves, I guess. It's all very internal. None of it is, I guess, brassy or showy at all. It's all within him. And I think the musical kind of does a disservice to the character by kind of undermining the whole song that came before it by giving it that huge note at the end. Yeah, I haven't super enjoyed anybody I've ever seen sing it.
The song ending on that like quiet reprise of the opening line, like, yeah, he has all these lofty goals, but guess what? Reality of the situation is he's stuck here in New York City without anyone. Sucks to suck. Here's reality. That's what makes it such a touching song.
And you see all the emotions that Jack goes through in this song. You see his motivations, you see where his frustrations are. Like the line that specifically jumped out at me was,
why should you only take what you're given? Why should you spend your whole life living trapped where there ain't no future? Even at 17, breaking your back for someone else's sake.
what a line. Who can't relate to that line in some capacity? We've all been at that point in life, maybe some of us still are, where we're just working for someone else. We're not getting anywhere. You're just stuck in this never-ending loop. He's frustrated that he's stuck.
It's like a midlife crisis at 17. So he gets there before many people do.
Well, again, you only live to be like 40, so he's about middle age at this point. So
pretty much. If you set this movie 100 years in the future, he'd be having the exact same struggles and anxieties, except instead of selling newspapers, he'd have a cubicle job.
One other thing I just want to end is you guys talked about the ending of the song. The way this song does so good, it ramps up, it plateaus a little bit, and then the way it eases you down, and you hear Jack pleading to Santa Fe or just the universe in general. Do you swear you won't forget me? God damn.
Pulls those heartstrings.
Nobody told the horse.
Dude, he just straight up stole that guy's horse. And then he just sends it off into the night.
Yeah, I'm like, if that dude were to have walked an extra or even jogged a little bit, he would have caught up. Like
Absolutely. He gives up
At
immediately.
the end of the song, he stops moving. He's just sitting there on the horse. The guy could have, the other just be like, knock, knock, knock. Hey, that's my horse. Get off.
All he did is, that's my horse, boy. Come on back here.
Is that my horse?
That night, Joseph Pulitzer meets with his advisors and decides to raise the prices that the Newsies must pay to buy newspapers from his distribution centers. Angered, Jack and David galvanize the other Manhattan Newsies to go on strike, featuring the song The World Will Know. As we already do know, this is actually what happened. Pulitzer did it, Hearst did it in response as the same way, or they got together and they decided we're doing this because, screw these kids. So factual moment, this was the catalyst that drove the strike. Outside of that, Pulitzer's little dance after he has the realization that, well, if I do it, then the others will do it. It's so disgusting and, like you said, Steve, cartoonishly evil, and I love it.
One of my favorite bits in the movie is Pulitzer here figuring this out, and like when he finally concludes, I can't pay my executives less if I want more money. I can't have that, so if we charge these, and then he starts like doing these adding machine noises.
Multiply by 40,000 papers a day, 7 days a week.
And then he doesn't even come up with a number at the end. He just looks at his little lackey and he's like, yes, it's a big number, isn't it? It's just so very silly, and it is the defining character moment for Pulitzer for me. Just so simple. I gotta believe that was just Robert Duvall messing around.
So, quick little thing about the money. I did the calculation, I did the research. The amount of money that Pulitzer is calculated to make would have been about $280 back then. Compared to what that would be today, that's $10,200 a week in revenue extra that he would be getting.
Wait, let me just take a minute to process all of that and how that would be. Wow, that's a lot.
It's a big number, isn't it?
It definitely adds up.
Can we talk about for a second that I don't think he's named. None of his lackeys are named, are they? Are they just
So there is Seitz, who was a real like second-hand man to Pulitzer. I don't think they named the other one.
Yeah, there's the one who you can tell he's not comfortable with this. You can tell he doesn't like I got the impression that he kind of feels like this is wrong, like that they shouldn't be doing this to the Newsies. And yet that goes nowhere. Like literally it's just like we forget about him. Nothing changes. You know, he doesn't speak up and
He never turns around.
it never gets acknowledged later either, you know?
Yeah.
I think it would have been nice to see some closure for his character a bit. You know, like I told you this was going to happen or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a dangling thread. You're right. Maybe they just didn't want to give the impression that the movie's trying to say, well, not all executives are bad. But I'm reaching.
If you do this, every newsie we've got will head straight for Hearst.
These people are so on point, and I've never seen them in anything else. It's really sad.
Quintessential evil cabal of rich white men controlling the world. It's great.
Speaking of desperate times and, disparaging moments in life, when the Newsies are sitting around just talking about how, like, I'll be back living in the streets, like, I'm barely making a living as it is, when they find out all of this news of how much the price has been jacked up, that is absolutely rough. And it still rings true today.
The difference this move makes from Pulitzer's perspective is, oh, I'm going to add a second atrium to my summer mansion. But then the perspective from the Newsies is, oh, I'm going to fucking die.
And I think it's also interesting the fact that some of them are like, oh, shoot, I can't afford this job anymore. Like, I can't afford to, sell the papers with me losing this much money. It's not a matter of like, oh, I stand to lose some. It's, oh, shoot, I stand to lose everything. I have no job.
Never forget out there, listeners, you are always infinitely closer to being homeless and destitute than you are to being a billionaire.
All right, let's talk the world will know. You got David being the mouthpiece for Jack, but in Jack fashion, he's improving on what David is saying in order to rally everyone together. It is such a good rallying song. Ugh, gets me amped every time I hear it.
Gets the juices flowing. And this part in particular reminded me something that unfortunately I missed in person, but one of the sites of the writer's strike, I think maybe earlier this week or possibly last week, some of them have been doing like theme days, and this one did a Newsies Day. I wish I was able to make it to that, but also like thinking about that, I think that's how all strikes should go. There should be organized singing, there should be choreography, there should be people doing flips, and everyone should have old-timey newspaper caps on. It's perfect.
Every strike should be an impromptu production of Newsies.
It's better than bringing in Imagine Dragons. I'd rather imagine I was listening to a good band.
Let's bring it back to the song here real quick. So while it's low-hanging fruit, it's a universal song, as they're not just singing about the world, the newspaper. They're talking about taking on the world. And, they hit you with that line. When you got 100 voices singing, who can hear a lousy whistle blow? The power in these lines is astronomical. And again, the choreography. Oh my gosh, perfection.
I think it might be the most powerful song, even over Seize the Day. Seize the Day is very powerful, but I think this song actually does a better job of that intensity, of that intensity of what they want, their goal, their, I guess, ambition for what they think they can do, because this is the moment that they realize what they can do.
This is a much angrier song, and it's much better at like getting your adrenaline flowing and getting you all pumped up about labor disputes.
One thing to notice throughout the song, because like I said before, the reason this musical is so good is that every song generally helps to further push along the narrative or shows what the characters are going through and helps to change them, right? So go back and watch this again. Watch David. David isn't singing along or moving with the Newsies at all, right? He's just kind of being a bystander up until the end where they all gather around him and he puts his arms around him and he starts singing with them up to, Pulitzer's office, right? This represents that David was hesitant at first, but now he fully endorses the strike.
And so do the rest of us. There's also just a beautiful camera movement in this number that like sticks out to me above the rest. It's near the end. Everybody's all in on the song. They're all staring up at the building and singing, and the camera like goes down to like about eye level, maybe a little bit lower, and then just tracks through the crowd. And like as it comes up to each character, they sort of step out of the way of the camera a little bit, and you just feel it going further and further in. It puts you in the middle of the dispute. It makes you one of the Newsies, and it's much easier to emotionally take you along for the ride. And beautiful camera movement. It's slow, but it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it achieves exactly what it's supposed to.
While the others spread the word to Newsies in New York's other boroughs, Jack and Les confront Pulitzer and are thrown out of his office. Brian Denton, a reporter for The Sun, takes an interest in the boys' story. Jack and David take their cause to the Brooklyn Newsies, but their leader, Spot Conlon, played by Gabriel Damon, is reluctant to join the strike. Brian Denton perfectly summarizing the struggle that these kids are about to face when he asks David,
David as in David and Goliath?
Denton is the only one at this time who gets how difficult this is about to be for them.
And you can also see that he thinks in headlines. That's immediately where his mind went. Spot on for a journalist. Also, just him being in the right place at the right time is what a journalist had to do back then, basically. Couldn't just like get a Google alert that, oh, this tanker blew up. It's either you're there to see it or you weren't.
And in that vein, too, I mean, he could just be saying that as kind of a way to, I guess, flatter the kid, so the kid kind of cooperates with him. Because he's a journalist, he wants the story. He knows these kids are in a spot where they don't trust grown-ups. They don't trust the grown-ups, and he's like, I'm cool, you can trust me.
Let's talk the Brooklyn intro. You could cut the tension with a knife. Like, Spot is just standing there staring daggers at everyone. He's another person, doesn't trust anyone. He's very careful about the words he says and the movements he make. Man, Gabriel Damon was such a good child actor.
Seriously.
Incredible performance. They do such a great job of building him up as this formidable, tough, difficult, but respected and powerful force. And then when he finally shows up, he lives up to all of that. And I got like big mob boss vibes from this guy.
Yeah.
Like 100%. He doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't have to get emotional. He is just in control of everything just by being there. And I love his cane.
I think he's my favorite character in the movie.
That's valid.
And speaking of valid, his concerns about their strike is also valid. Right now, it's clearly all fun and games to these kids. They truly have not proven to anyone that they really want this.
He's obviously highly intelligent, and being a newsie, I'm sure he's read about the trolley strike. There's probably been other strikes that he's read about. He knows how the story plays out. All completely justified of that. And one other thing I wanted to point out, like on their journey to Brooklyn, there's that moment where they're stopping on the Brooklyn Bridge and then the camera backs back out, zooms out, and you see the whole like old-timey New York. I just want to talk about the lost art of the matte painting, something that basically never happens anymore, but when it is done well, like it is here, it is completely justified to keep the camera static and just showcasing this beautiful work of art, taking us back to a different time in New York City. I'm sure in the early 90s, that was probably maybe not necessarily a wow moment because matte paintings had been around for a while, but like it's a moment where you can't help but be like, wow, what a gorgeous view. Yeah, matte paintings are thoroughly underappreciated in how much effort it takes, not just from the artist itself, but in the cinematographer setting it up so it perfectly aligns with the shot. And he's shooting like through a little window in this painting in a way that makes everything work. It's so much effort, and when it pays off, it pays off very well.
News of Brooklyn's reluctancy dejects the Manhattan Newsies, but David riles them up, featuring the song Seize the Day. As a result, they ambush the distribution center and destroy all of the newspapers. Disabled newsie Crutchy, played by Marty Belofsky, is captured by Pulitzer's enforcers, the Delancey brothers, and placed in an orphanage and juvenile detention center called The Refuge. where it's revealed that Warden Snyder neglects the orphans so that he can embezzle money given to him by the city for their care. So remember how I mentioned last scene, right? Spot already knows how these kids are acting. David and them, they all come back. What are they doing? They're sword fighting. They're making newspaper hats. They're playing dice games, whatever. They literally are not taking this seriously at all.
Yeah, like you said, it's completely what Spot predicted. He's justified in not trusting this movement and not thinking it's going to go anywhere.
Let's talk Seize the Day.
Seize the Day is amazing.
I want to point out something. So in the musical, I don't know exactly how many songs they do this for, but with this song in specific, they changed some of the lyrics, and I actually think that they work better in the musical. Like I guess they further refine some of the thoughts, I guess, and make it more specific.
Okay.
Like, for example, lyric neighbor to neighbor, father to son is changed from Houston to Harlem, look what's begun. And I like that line better.
Okay.
It's I guess it echoes what I like about and the world will know. It's kind of a continuation of it as opposed to a new idea.
Sure.
Which I think is why I feel like this, I don't want to say this song kneecaps the world will know, but I feel like the sentiment a little bit does, because it doesn't acknowledge that emotion anymore. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. Harlem to Houston is, yeah, that feels like more in line with the rest of the lyrics of the show. Like they're constantly talking about different boroughs and different areas and trying to bring everyone together.
One of the other things I wanted to point out is David is actually successfully banding everyone together. Notice that he starts off by himself and they get louder and louder the more Newsies join, the more that they join up. It just builds and builds and it builds, showing that they're finally coming together. They're finally getting more focused.
They are seizing the crap out of that day.
And poor Crutchy, man.
Yeah.
That poor fella. He's just caught up in the excitement and random thing. Growing up, I always conflated Crutchy with Screech from Saved by the Bell. I know they're not the same actor, but I always, in my head, they were always the exact same person.
Another quick departure from the movie and musical. You might not know this. In the musical, Crutchy actually dies. He dies in the orphanage. And part of me forgot that didn't happen in the movie.
What the hell, musical? Crutchy's too pure.
The Newsies try to ward off strikebreakers, but the struggle turns violent and turns out to be a trap set by Pulitzer, who has hired goons to beat up the strikers. Just as the Newsies are about to be arrested, Spot Conlon arrives with the Brooklyn Newsies, and the two groups unite to repel the goons. Denton puts the story on the front page of The Sun. So there's a quick reprise of Seize the Day here. Just one note on it. It shows that the group is even more united and focused than ever after Crutchy was captured and worked over. They've got, the youngest up front. They're acting as like drummer boys. Like these kids are ready for war.
Something else that probably the only thing that genuinely truly dates this movie is the Seize the Day reprise. Pretty sure this is right around like the height of the popularity of Stomp. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But it seemed like around this time, everybody had to have a trash can percussion number because Stomp was so popular. So let's do Stomp. I'm not going to say it doesn't work here, but it just immediately takes you out of it and remembering that like moment in pop culture.
My question is, when I saw that, I'm like, who rigged that thing? Who built it? Like, because this is clearly a setup with like differently pitched drums strapped around a kid's waist. That he's not that. I'm like, who built that? This kid built it. Where did he get those cans?
Yeah, this kid's wasting his talent selling newspapers.
Waited behind Old Man Forrester's about an hour for the trash to be taken out. Took those oil cans, turned them right into a drum, don't you know?
Exactly.
I mean, this might be an obvious question, but do these people really have no shame in literally beating children?
Let's get into it, man.
With blunt instruments.
Yeah, right. I'm like, dude, these kids could get killed.
There's like a 2x4. There are bats. There's like real, not just like regular chains that you think. No. Them thick chains. Like these are shipyard chains. Like these hold a boat together and they're about to break a kid's skull.
And of course the cops are in on it because money.
But hey, who comes to save the day?
Never fear, Brooklyn is here.
It's so cheesy, but it just works. It just works. It really does, man. Like, oh gosh, I love how the music too quickly turns from grim to triumphant the second that they all start popping up off of the roofs and everything. Ah, gives me like happy little goosebumps, like I can't not smile at this.
Also, how they take the time to set up the slingshot when they go to Brooklyn, and then the slingshots appear again, and that's what saves them in the end. Oh my god.
And they're like deadly.
Yeah, right. I'm like, shoot. But also,
Have you ever been shot with a marble, man? It hurts.
I was thinking about it. Like, if I was an adult, about to beat these kids, and I got something very like thick hurled at the back of my skull, I would probably want to stop what I was doing and get somewhere else.
Honestly, those skulls would have cracked under that pressure. It's all of that force being pushed right in that little tiny spot. It's not like a big rock or anything, right? It's really tiny. So they probably all have multiple tiny fractures in their skull if they're all getting hit in the head with that. I absolutely would run if children started shooting marbles at my face.
Well, here's hoping.
It's not even point blank. Like they're the adults, their power is based on proximity. Like you got to swing something, kids got to be within reach. These guys, they're like snipers, they can get you from far away. They're not even in your path of danger. Like it's a fantastic strategy by these kids, really.
And it feels very, very kid-y, which is perfect for the movie. Also, another 90s staple that I'm pretty sure was just like written into law is you can't have a movie with children in a fight without someone getting kicked in the nuts. And this scene is where that happens. They're just contractually obligated.
Thrilled, the Newsies all rejoice at making the headline and imagine what it would be like to be famous, featuring the song King of New York. They then plan to hold a rally. Crutchy accidentally reveals to Snyder that he knows Jack. Snyder visits the boarding house but is distracted by the other Newsies while Jack escapes. Jack sleeps on the fire escape outside of the Jacobs and has breakfast with Sarah on the roof, where he tells her of his desire to flee to Santa Fe and wonders if she would miss him. Snyder then informs Pulitzer that Jack is an escapee from the refuge, giving Pulitzer legal cause to have him arrested. All right, first off, let's talk King of New York. This was definitely put in for the sake of showcasing the other Newsies that wasn't just Jack and David. They wanted to show off everybody here in this scene, and they did a great job of it. It's so catchy.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite song in the movie. Aside from being super catchy, it's a great insight into all these characters' heads by seeing like what they value. Like now that they're celebrities and they're famous, they're on the front page of the papers, which their entire world is newspapers, so they are on top of the world from their perspective. They can have anything they want. Just hearing the different things that they're offering up, like the kids are all, I want a tub with boiling water, I want shoes with matching laces, and then when you get to like Denton's I want a desk. I want to be the star reporter. I'm protecting the weak. And paying for lunch. And just like the contrast between these two is just plays so well.
I love this song. I think when I was a kid, this was my favorite song because it's so joyous. Like literally, it is so joyous. The music, even more than and that's again speaks to the genius of Alan Menken. It's the genius of the music telling you exactly how you're supposed to feel, and there not being any question about it. You're happy. This is exciting. And I will say, yeah, I did love, the fact that, Kenny Ortega was probably like, you know what, we have all these kids who can dance, let them dance, let them dance. I wish they had, this wouldn't have made sense. In the musical, this is a huge tap number. I wish that could have found its way into the movie. I know they did some like soft, chewy, stompy stuff like that would be tap without tap shoes. But I'm like, the Broadway kid in me is like, I wish this was a tap number.
I can relate to that, and like when they get to the soft shoe, I almost want to hear them tapping. I feel it may have like taken us out of the movie a little bit, but the movie isn't concerned with that.
It crosses the threshold just too much, just a tiny bit too much. And it was like, oh, this isn't real anymore.
No, what you got to do is have the kids find that kid with the can drums, and they dismantle the drums, then put the metal on the bottoms of their shoes, and then they go to the restaurant.
Oh, that's it. That's gotta be that should have been a rewrite in that movie.
Damn it, Menken.
Notice when Pulitzer's talking about using the police and thugs to break up the rally with violence, right? What's the word he calls it? Justice. Because in his mind, how dare anyone go up against him? It's not about the money at this point. It's about the power.
Yep. Loves him some power.
Newsies from around New York gather at Meta Larkson's Bowery. Jack, David, and Spot give speeches encouraging the Newsies to stick together and not give up on their cause. Before they all go back to their burrows, Meta cheers them up with a song, featuring the song High Times, Hard Times. Before we get into it, historically, this rally did in fact actually happen. It happened at Irving Hall on July 24th. It is estimated there were 5,000 boys from Manhattan, along with 2,000 boys from Brooklyn and several hundreds from other areas of the city. So this was huge. And much like in the film, David Simmons, who was the union president at the time, or like the co-president, he did ask for people like, hey guys, we need to adopt nonviolent methods of resistance. This is kind of what they want us to do. Much like what David says in the film, and everyone's kind of like, what are you talking about? Let's just beat the crap out of people.
I have a question actually about that.
Yeah.
Where were her patrons?
This was at night. I feel like she has shows like throughout the day. Because like when they're running from Snyder, that like it's middle of the afternoon and they duck in and she's like just finishing up a show. Or this is the night that the theater's dark.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, wait.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, I was like, wait a second, theater happens at night.
Yeah, that's okay. I've only seen this show at night.
Well, yeah, let's say it's their night off.
High Times, Hard Times. Let's talk it. The song doesn't serve any purpose to moving the plot forward. It's just meant to be simple fun. It's definitely the weakest song in the entire film, but again, it's silly fun. Like, this song is to Newsies as Papa is to Oliver.
That's a good comparison. That made me happy. I like that. I don't know. I mean, this song was treated so awfully by getting the disgrace of a Golden Razzie. Voted the worst song. You dare do that to Alan Menken with 2 Oscars in hand, right? As we said before. I mean, to me, it's wrong. I think it's unjust. It's not fair. It's fun. It is fun. It's weird. Like, musically, it's weird. It doesn't really make a ton of sense, but yeah, that's kind of the point, and it makes them happy. It's like, yeah, this is a silly little song. We're gonna make these kids happy. Whatever, they deserve some levity right now. They're in the middle of a goddamn strike, right? People are threatening violence. Let's make them smile and sing. Great.
It almost has the vibe of like a drinking song.
Yes, it does.
Like
yes,
something fun and simple that the whole crowd can join in on. It's a communal event.
It's even got that swaying feeling to it, like literally, like I'm doing it right now, but like but like I should be holding like a stein in my hand and like crashing it with friends.
For sure.
That's the 6/8 time signature right there, doing that for you.
At the end of the song, police break up the rally and arrest the Newsies, but Denton steps in to pay their legal fines. Snyder testifies against Jack and reveals to the others that Jack's real name is Francis Sullivan. His mother is deceased and his father incarcerated. Jack is sentenced to 4 years of rehabilitation in the refuge. Denton reveals that none of the papers covered the rally and that he is reassigned as a war correspondent, no longer allowed to report on the strike. Man, this whole breaking up of the rally is so heartbreaking, and I think it's perfectly captured in Meta screaming out and pleading with like these cops and hired goons, like, take pity on Racetrack, like he's just a child. Like,
yeah.
You feel that in your core when you're watching this. You're like, my God.
Like, she's the only one that ever really treats them as children, other than the nuns. You know, she's like, yeah, these are kids. Everybody's like, oh, let's treat them like adults.
Yeah, she's the closest to a mother that they have.
And it sucks that you never see her again after this.
No, you don't. Why not?
Yeah, what the hell? But also, like, having built up Jack at this point as someone who always gets away, you get the sense that he's gonna, find a way out of this one. Also, it really adds gravity to, like, when they end that chase with that slow motion uppercut and he goes back into the arms.
Oh, the slow motion uppercut.
Oh my God. It is so gut-wrenching, and it takes an entire crowd full of cops and goons to bring down Jack Kelly.
It feels like he's being crucified.
Absolutely. Got the arms out, being carried on his back. His name begins with a J.
I also, like, another little quick thing I enjoyed when David tells Jack to run, and Jack's like, what do I do? And he's like, no, get out of here. David picks up that swing and he holds it like a bat, like he's ready. Like, the determination in his eyes, he's totally a changed individual at this point. He's not afraid to fight anymore. He's ready to throw down and start beating people's asses if he has to do it.
and everyone else is there with him. Also, I love Denton's use of the flashbacks to disorient Snyder. Always seems so innocent. Oh, picture for the paper? What a little scamp.
Brilliant.
And then this is not the scene I was talking about where David, you really feel the emotion from David, but David feeling completely betrayed by Denton for not pushing, publishing the story about the rally and everything. He just doesn't have any words for Denton whatsoever. He's just glaring at him because he just feels so hurt that the one adult who was standing with them, who was actually like actively backing them, like paying for their lunches, putting them on the front page, what have you, is saying, I can't help you anymore, and just walks away.
And you can tell that he doesn't even fully believe his own excuse. I have to have a paper to write for. It's a cowardly move. He's going back to say yes to the boss man. Oh, well, the powerful people beat us. Nothing we can do. Guess I better go make some money.
And I think that makes it even worse, honestly, the fact that he doesn't believe it. And I think the kids know that he doesn't believe it either. 'Cause they can see it. Wow, you're going to abandon us for something you don't even think is true.
Capitalism, baby.
But shout out to Les for wanting to save that hot dog. He saves the entire movement.
See, hot dogs save lives, folks.
True story.
Jack is taken to see Pulitzer, who offers to waive his sentence and pay him a salary if he will work as a strikebreaker. When Pulitzer threatens to have the other Newsies thrown into the refuge, Jack complies. The boys attempt to rescue Jack, but he tells them to leave, featuring a Santa Fe reprise. So here it is. Jack finally getting that meeting with Pulitzer that he's wanted from the beginning. And Pulitzer, when he realizes he can't control Jack, immediately turns to violence. Like he starts yelling at Jack when Jack's like, all right, I'm done with this conversation. There's nothing you can do. And Jack calls him right out.
I must have you scared pretty bad, old man.
Oh, I loved this meeting.
Great ballsy move on his part. And Pulitzer's whole speech about power and how it's the greatest thing in the world, and he has the power of the press, he can shape the whole world. It's just a whole bunch of posturing. You can tell that he's really just trying to impress Jack at this point. One last ditch attempt at intimidation. But then also through that, he finds Jack's weak point. Threatened to throw all the Newsies into this abusive place that is horrible. Finally gets Jack to give up that one thing that he's been chasing the entire time, his freedom.
And you see it all in his smile. Like Jack is smiling at Pulitzer, and Pulitzer drops that. What about your buddy David, huh? He's got a family. How well do you think he's gonna do in jail, huh? Yeah. How's that feel? And just, oh God, it's even more heartbreaking when Jack is telling David, like, run, get out of here. You have to worry about your family. Don't worry about me. I have no one. Just get out of here.
And it's interesting because, there's this whole talk about Jack being self-serving the entire movie, self-proclaimedly self-serving. And yet this moment, he is acting purely out of the benefit of everybody else, but in a way that comes across as self-serving. So he can't even reap the benefits of it. So that is literally the purest example of being selfless. It's being selfless in a way that nobody knows you're being selfless.
It is truly the greatest sacrifice of all.
Really good line that I enjoy during the Santa Fe reprise. When Jack's just sitting in that cell, Crutchy's talking to him through the bars. He's like, you think we're gonna beat him, Jack? And what's Jack hit him with?
We was beat when we was born.
Some of the lines in this film hit so hard, especially when you grow up feeling like an outcast. And I think that's why this film resonated with me so much as a kid, because I always felt like when I saw all of like the crap that people would put other people through and everything, like the underdog, it just hit home for me so much.
For sure.
The Newsies are shocked and dismayed to see Jack report for work the next day. When the Delanceys attack the Jacobs children, Jack steps in to save them, despite knowing this will break his deal with Pulitzer. David getting the chance to confront Jack's lies and his betrayal. This is the best performance Moscow gave in the entire film. Mm-hmm. This was award nomination at least worthy from him.
I also feel like Jack saying what he does to David not just like maintains the facade and keeps his sacrifice and keeps his deal in place. I think he's also doing it, at least in part, to light a fire under David's ass. One last ditch effort to keep the movement alive and escalate things, just purely because he knew exactly what to say to piss David off the most.
Also, I'm pretty sure it's implied that the Delanceys were going to rape Sarah, and I'm really glad they didn't get much closer to that because the tone would have been way off for what they've gone through in this film.
Yeah.
It was almost like you had to connect the dots more than you actually saw anything happening, because like they weren't really even touching her after a point. Like she was shown in a shot almost by herself, just like sitting there on the floor. I mean, you can guess that's where they were going, but I feel like they could not explicitly be like, "Oh, that's what's coming."
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Disney, and I get it. I feel like a lot of films might have gotten closer to the sun in that aspect, and I'm just glad they towed that line very carefully. If they gone any further, like even a smidge, it would have just gone too far. Like say like tearing her dress like briefly or something like that would have just been too much. It would have been way off tone.
Yeah. They communicate what their intentions are enough. It's all we need for the sake of the story. And the safety of Jack's friends is what drove him into this deal. So now he sees that that's been compromised. He's like, F that. Beat these guys up. Stupid Delanceys with their dumb hats. It all tracks for their characters.
The Newsies learn from Denton that their strike has had little effect on public opinion since the city thrives on child labor, but that the sweatshop kids were starting to listen to Jack. Using an old printing press of Pulitzer's, they publish a Newsy banner, which they distribute to child workers citywide, featuring the song Once and for All. Fun fact, this actually did happen. They did hand out pretty much newsletters to people during the strike when this was happening, trying to drive up more noticing of it, trying to get more people on their side. So this actually happened. But let's talk about Once and for All. It's a different kind of rallying song as compared to Seize the Day, where Seize the Day is a song of determination, but Once and for All is one of hope. Hope that for once and for all, that they'll get through to the people that are going to be able to help them turn the tide.
Musically, I feel what's happening here is at the beginning of the song, we're left with the end of Act 2, all is lost, everything is broken, everything is hopeless, yada yada. That always happens in the movie. So this song starts with that nothing, and then I got like an image of a steam engine, the way the beat kind of goes and picks up. Slowly but surely it builds. We start off with each of their individual voices until finally everyone joins together, and then there's a big chorus behind them by the end of the song. I also just think narratively it's the perfect Act 3 escalation, taking it from a newsy strike to a child labor strike, and everything expanding and being as big as it can be. I also think one thing that sets this apart from all the other numbers is this one is presented in voiceover, while everything else was diegetic. And it kind of, I think, one, escalates the timeline of them printing out all these copies of this paper, which probably took 5 effort. It also kind of makes the voices seem like they could be coming from anyone. And by the end, they are.
A testament to, once again, the brilliance of the songwriters and the people who were able to craft that moment. Basically, it was everyone coming together. And I think we've been talking so much about these moments, specifically like in songs with the camera work and the lyrics and the music. And it's like the best moments in this movie are the moments when everything works together. Like it's a symbiotic relationship of sorts, that everything kind of benefits from the success of a different aspect of the movie. I think that's what makes this movie so good, in a lot of ways. Narratively as well, I think this is the first time that striking obviously was a decision that they made, but this is probably the first time that they actually have something solid, something that they know they can do. This is an actionable thing. They're like, we are going to do this, like not abstract, not just like, oh yeah, wouldn't that be nice? No, we're doing this. We're doing this right now, and this is it. And I like the definitiveness of it.
The rest of the movie, they were relying on having a big enough movement that the newspapers couldn't help but publish it. And finally here they find their victory in cutting that out. Hey, let's publish it ourselves. The media.
Denton shares the paper with Governor Theodore Roosevelt, played by David James Alexander, exposing the mistreatment of children at the refuge. Numerous child laborers join the strike, bringing the city's workforce to a standstill. Jack and David confront Pulitzer, who finally gives in to their demands, featuring the world will know, reprise. So the crowd pouring in and reciting the words to the world will know is to symbolize that the Newsies' words have truly reached the child labor workers. Everyone is finally united. It's like a very quick but simple way to make the scene even stronger. Because think about it, you could have just had all these kids just pouring in, right? They could have just been pouring and cheering and holding their signs. No, you add the words that started the strike because these people are starting off now and they're starting to join. Again, just, oh, God. Feldman, you beautiful bastard.
Also, I feel like they kind of add a third layer to the expression the world will know, because now it's not just the paper that will know. Now it's not just the readers that will know. Now it is, well, not just the readers that will know about the strike, but now the world knows, the whole world knows they can join in on the strike. And I think that's finally the piece that they were missing, bringing in the full power of the people, which is ultimately what gives them their victory, which is apparently fictional.
Pulitzer's pure desperation as he's screaming at the thousands in the streets to just go home. He is so believing of his total control and power over the city that he can just tell thousands of people go home and they'll do it, right? But he knows he's been beaten. And the second he realizes it is when he's told it was his press that printed the paper. These kids beat him at his own game.
It is delicious.
I love the way that Jack says it. We only use the best.
Yeah. I hope I get to thank him someday, and he does.
Yeah, I mean, Pulitzer is ultimately the one that sent him down to that basement that had a printing press in it.
Roosevelt has Snyder arrested, releases the children from the refuge, and thanks Jack for alerting him to the situation. He offers Jack a ride, and Jack asks to be taken to the train yard so he can head to Santa Fe. The Newsies are disheartened by this, but Jack returns shortly after, having been convinced by Roosevelt that he still has things to accomplish in New York. As the Newsies celebrate his return, Sarah and Jack kiss. There's a lot of satisfaction here when Crutchy, gets to close and lock the door on Snyder, who is just completely in shock at everything unfolding.
Justice for Crutchy. Also, just like Teddy Roosevelt posing for the crowd and doing like his cartoonish hat tipping thing is so silly.
But also, that feels like something that he would do. Like knowing that man and everything, just like his life was cartoonish in a way. I mean, this man got shot during a speech.
And finished the speech.
This man is not human. He's a cartoon character. And in this movie, that is exactly what he is.
That actor had a ton of fun playing him.
And how about Jack when he's just walking to the car? He's like, can you take me to the train yards? Doesn't say goodbye to anyone. Doesn't even wave to people. He just gets in and just goes. Like, dude, are you really that hyper-focused right now? Like, he comes back, but oh my God. You couldn't at least say goodbye to the Jacobs?
No, he's Irish.
Yeah. And Sarah, too. Like, he didn't even say goodbye to her. She just watched the sequence where she's just watching him and getting consistently more and more sad. I'm just like, how is this a happy ending? No, it isn't.
We've just developed this really intricate, deep relationship with each other that's based on mutual understanding of who we are as people, and now he's gone?
It was the style at the times.
They're horny teenagers. What can you say? It happens.
Also, this final little song and dance medley at the end with some credits rolling over the top is great. It really gives it that Broadway musical ending where the whole cast is coming out for that curtain call.
It's a great little dance number, and did you guys watch to see what happens after that freeze frame ends? The kid falls on his stupid face. It's so great. That's my biggest laugh of the movie. Just that kid falling down after that whole elaborate number.
So just slapstick comedy in the end of this, like, drama, gritty, dramatic movie about child abuse.
Amazing. I gotta believe that they ran out of time shooting that sequence and they got everything perfect except for that kid's jump kick at the end, and they just decided to roll with it.
You know what that could be? Didn't have enough, all the rewrites they had to do. They didn't have time to just you know what? You fall. That's in the movie.
Also, Jack's whole character arc coming to a close at the end. In the beginning, his I Want song starts off with, so that's what they call a family. But then here at the end, after he thanks Mr. Roosevelt, he says, besides, I got family here. Character development.
And folks, that's going to wrap up the breakdown.
It broke down. I don't know. I got nothing.
Nah, you tried your best. And speaking of trying your best, folks, another quick advertisement break.
Are you looking for something tantalizing and titillating to spice up your nights out? Why not come be enchanted by Spellbound Cabaret, the queer, all-inclusive burlesque troupe of Rochester, New York. Watch our talented and sexy beauties shake, shimmy, and strut their stuff. We produce everything from classic and creepy to hilarious and horrific. So no matter what your fancy, we'll have something to fulfill your desires. You can catch our shows on the last Friday of every month at Boulder Cafe, located at the corner of Alexander and South Clinton in Rochester. Doors open at 8 p.m. with showtime at 9. If you're feeling especially indulgent, we also offer limited VIP seating with complimentary champagne and dessert. Pre-sale tickets for both VIP and general admission are available at spellboundtickets.com. That's spellboundtickets.com. So come on out and see all that Spellbound has to offer.
Welcome back, folks.
Here we are.
Hey guys, real quick, could you guys spare 2 dimes, or as it's better known, 2
Little bits!
Oh, just a little bit.
That's right, folks. Little bits, the part of the pod we get to those things we didn't get to say. Maybe some fun stuff that we learned along the way. So, Scott, you're our guest. Do you have any bits?
Surprisingly, got no bits today. Managed to say all of it already.
You're just that good.
I guess.
You'll love to see it. Nice, efficient, unlike me and Steve. Steve, you got a bit?
We've talked a bit about the choreo here. I still maintain that most of the choreo in this movie is very simple and easy to learn, but one trick they do throughout that I feel removes that notion from the audience's head almost across the board is they've got a few kids who are good at acrobatics, and you just take the simple choreo and you add a few tricks here and there, a few flips, a few cartwheels, and suddenly you have fluffed this up into an elaborate dance number. It's a relatively simple trick if you have actors that have that skill, and they used it perfectly here. Corey, you got a bit?
Before this film, Disney had not made a live-action musical until 1971's Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
That's crazy. Could not be a more different film, by the way.
That's a whole other pony, and we'll get there someday. Steve, you got a bit?
When they're first, the initial pre-strike at the newspaper, once they realize what the price is and they're not letting anyone do it, then the one guy does, and then it descends into the whole riot thing. Just another iconic image that is burned into my brain forever is Christian Bale making faces against the glass, and just being very silly and blowing into it. Whenever I tried to make funny faces against a window, that is exactly what I was trying to emulate, and I was never as good at it. Corey, you got a bit?
The original ending to the film was to have Jack at the train yard boarding a train to Santa Fe like he had always dreamed of. However, it was deemed too expensive to shoot, so they changed the ending to him just coming back.
Damn. They almost went with a worse ending. Thank goodness for money, am I right? Capitalism, baby!
Steve, you got a bit?
The whole Roosevelt coming and making everything better at the end could feel very Deus Ex Machina. But shout out to the movie, and this is something that I hadn't picked up on before, but they drop breadcrumbs for Roosevelt throughout the entire movie. There's obviously Jack's escape story, but early on in the restaurant, Denton makes a passing remark that he knows Roosevelt because he, did that thing with him, and they were in whatever war and marching on things, and Roosevelt being the guy. But also, when Pulitzer lays the trap for the Newsies and the scabbers come out and then all the goons come out, if you look closely at the newspapers the scabbers are holding, it is a front page story about Teddy Roosevelt. They pepper that man in throughout the entire movie, and then it finally pays off. That was my last bit. Corey, you got any more?
A young Aaron Lohr plays Mush in this film. You may know him better as Dean Portman, also known as one half of the Bash Brothers in the Mighty Ducks franchise. He was also the singing voice of Max Goof in 1995's The Goofy Movie, and he kicked off the song Life Support Song Number 2, aka Will I, in the Rent film adaptation. Not to mention, he is married to the beautiful and irreplaceable Idina Menzel.
For now. I'm not giving up, guys.
Little bits!
No, just a little bit.
All right, folks, now it's time for everyone's favorite segment.
Oh, is this the Untitled Ben Affleck segment?
That's right, Steve. It's As Played by Ben Affleck.
Untitled Ben Affleck segment.
Now, for those who never listened in, As Played by Ben Affleck
Untitled Ben Affleck segment
is when we choose one character from the film that we just watched to replace with Ben Affleck. Now, there are 3 eras of Ben Affleck that we have to choose from, so we choose a character to replace with Ben Affleck, what era, and why. First off, we have the Good Will Hunting era Ben Affleck, which is when he was the indie darling and just starting to get into action films. Next up, we have the Jiggly era Ben Affleck. This is the rom-com, starting around the release of the Jiggly film. Finally, we have Batfleck era Ben Affleck, where he's older, more chiseled, and got that beautiful salt and pepper beard. Now, with that being said, Scott, who are you replacing with Ben Affleck? What era and why?
I mean, this is really, really low-hanging fruit, but I feel like it has to be said. I would definitely, the obvious, I guess, progression of things is Christian Bale to Ben Affleck. So making him as Jack Kelly, the Good Will Hunting stage as Jack Kelly, he would do very, very well. So I think he has everything that Christian Bale has that allowed him to play that character well is what Ben Affleck also has.
Steve, what about you?
I'm going to be replacing Snyder with Snyder era Ben Affleck, aka Batfleck.
A little Snyder on Snyder action.
Oh, little Snyder! I think Snyder should absolutely be an intimidating presence. So making him still an older guy, but like a really jacked up older guy, I think really drives home the hopeless, abusive nature of the refuge. And I wouldn't want that guy chasing after me in a boxing match or through a labor rally or any of that. That's a scary ward in there. So Corey, who are you replacing with Ben Affleck, what era, and why?
I would replace Teddy Roosevelt with Batfleck era Ben Affleck. If we're talking about the kind of Teddy Roosevelt that I could really see him owning, it'd be that, like this force that can be very charming, very nice, but also very commanding. I would 100% buy into that. I think it would be entertaining to see. And just like a quick little cameo right at the end.
Right on. Affleck with a mustache.
I like both of those. They're great.
I like both of you. You're great.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up As Played by Ben Affleck.
Untitled Ben Affleck segment.
And it's going to lead us to our final question, which is, of course, boys, would you watch this film again? Scott?
Oh, 100%. I mean, what kind of a musical theater kid would I be if I did not watch Newsies again for the rest of my life? Like, that would be pretty sad, and I would have to hand in my musical theater boy card.
That is in the bylaws.
Steve, how about you?
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those movies that I can never get enough of. Nostalgia factor aside, the songs slap, the performances are great. It is, unfortunately, an ever-timely story and theme. This isn't even the first time this year I've watched this movie. In all likelihood, it won't be the last. It's great. I can always throw it on for a good time. Corey, would you ever watch this film again?
Yes, absolutely. I watched it twice in preparation for this. It is one of my favorite films of all time. Helped further push not just a love of, musicals in me. This film was so important to me in my childhood of sticking up for the right thing, the little guy, really kicking me off to being that little punk rock rebel that I eventually became and still am down at my core. Damn the man, save the empire, and the world. That's what I got here today. I love this film in and out. I will probably watch it again tonight because I just love it so much. Everything Newsy, all the time. Extra, no one's surprised.
And the world will know.
All right, folks, and that's going to wrap up 1992's Newsies. We did it, boys. We did it.
Extra special thank you to Scott Sr. for coming on. You're a wonderful man, a wonderful friend, and I'm glad that we were able to make this work.
Me too. I appreciate you, Steve.
Yeah, man, it was really great having you, honestly. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on, and hopefully we can get you on here again.
There are a lot of musicals out there.
But all pleasantries aside, Steve, what do we got on the books for next time?
Yep, next week we are bringing it back to the old jolly old football pitch, innit? Ted Lasso, episodes 4 through 6. Oh man, we're going from one warm hug to another. I'm here for it.
You know what, Steve? Bring me those biscuits, baby. But until then, I've been Corey.
I'm Steve.
Goodbye.
Bye. When he's on the cattle ranch, do they have to refer to him as Bill Bowman? Stupid ass hats.